FEMS Paint presents an in-depth look at FE fans discussing different opinions. I quite enjoy those Fire Emblem Fates games. Really, I find them to be quite shallow and pedantic. Well, that's alright. If everyone liked the same game, there wouldn't be different games. Oh, absolutely, good sir. And I believe that Ike fellow is in a homosexual relationship with the pretty mage boy. I prefer to think of him as being a heterosexual with the pretty green lady. Well, you know what they say about headcanons. There's a different one for every head. And I think Mercedes is prettier with short hair. Every friend group has the oh-so-essential mom friend. The one that holds the single brain cell out of your entire group. They're always there to make the sensible decisions, be a helpful person, and be the glue that holds your friends together no matter how stupid you are. And the Blue Lions, who are mostly people with serious mental problems, are in serious need of the powerful mom friend. Thankfully, Mercedes is quite possibly the greatest mom in all of Three Houses. Such a great mom that she doesn't even need children to be an expert mom. Though, given the parent quality in Three Houses, actually having a child is a bad sign for parent quality, funnily enough. Mercedes' problems in life begin before she's even out of the womb, as her father dies before she is born. It's never said what he died from, so we'll just say it was, Roboenza. Yeah, sure. Mercedes was born with a minor crest of Lamine, and her mother rather quickly found a new husband in a baron named Bartels, and Mercedes had a happy family once her mother gave birth to Mercedes' half-brother Emile.
That's good.
Unfortunately, her new stepdad only desired her mother for the ability to bear a child with a crest, and felt little love for the two of them once he got a son with one.
That's bad.
But Emile was loved by Mercedes, and her childhood with him was one they both loved and cherished along with their mother.
That's good.
Unfortunately, Mercedes and her mother were treated like garbage now that Bartels got an heir of his own through Emile, and they fled the horrid home life when Mercedes was 10 years old.
Can I go now?
Yeah, needless to say, Mercedes' early years were a mixed bag of events, to say the very least. And wouldn't you know it, once Mercedes gets out of the clutches of her cruel stepfather, she gets into the clutches of her cruel adopted father. After a few years of living in a monastery in Fargus, which is worth noting was a happy time where she helped people for the church, she was coveted by a greedy merchant. This man was a commoner, but if he had a daughter with a crest, he could marry her off with his name and use that as his free ticket into the big leagues of Fodlan. Though Mercedes was sent from one crest-hungry man to another, it was during her time as his daughter that she was able to attend sorcery school, and there met a young girl named Annette. The two girls hit it off very well, and became incredibly close friends during their time at the school, and the two of them would reunite when Mercedes, on the whims of her father, joined the Imperial Academy, finally bringing us to the events at the start of the game. There are two main things to take away from Mercedes' backstory. First, crests are bad and have caused her a lot of grief. Now I know, she is far from the only character to have that be a footnote on her story, but part of what makes the crest system such a problem is how many people it fucks over, so Mercedes helps enforce that. The other note, and perhaps the one more personal for her, is the amount of control she's had over her life. And that is to say, she has had absolutely no control over her life. She's had to cater to the whims of pretty much everyone but herself, and as she grows older, that fact becomes a very important facet of her character. During the story of Three Houses, Mercedes is mostly a background character, which is not uncommon in the slightest. She'll chime in when the Blue Lions have their group scenes, but beyond that, she's just a minor character that you have to go out of your way to see. Well, that's what supports are for. So what else to do but dive right into them and see her for everything she's got. I'm not going to go over every single support she has, but I do want to highlight some of the supports that best highlight how she acts during the Act 1 story. The main thing we need to gather from her early supports is that she's very nice and also very pious. In her Byleth support, she's helping a monk who hurt his foot make it to church so he can pray because she values prayer. In her support with Hilda, Hilda asks her to help clean the greenhouse, which she goes above and beyond in doing so. In her support with Dimitri, she's trying to help him sew without breaking the needle like the goddamn chimpanzee that he is. While these moments aren't some grandiose showcase of complex characterization, they're all enjoyable and just showing her being sweet and likable. She's also very devout in her worship, as she's praying a lot in her supports and in general holds the goddess in very high regard. Mercedes is kind of like the religious person Jesus wants people to be, rather than the kind of religious person that some people end up being. But Mercedes is not all just sunshine and cupcakes. She's capable of having some bite to her as well. She supports with what I like to call the fuckboy brigade: Ferdinand, Sylvain, and Lorenz. And if you're gonna get annoyed talking to someone, odds are it's gonna be one of those three before anyone else. When Sylvain tries to Sylvain his way into her good side, she immediately calls him out on his pickup line and mocks it in front of him. When Ferdinand starts loving the sound of his own voice a little too much, she straight up just leaves in the middle of him talking, which is hilarious. And she's perhaps most bitter to Lorenz, directly shaming him for his incredibly classist views on people, quote, beneath his stature. While all three of these supports end better than they start, in part because all the fuckboys grow up and develop into fuck men, the fact that she doesn't just sit idly by and tolerate their initial bullshit helps stop her from just being a one-note goody-two-shoes lady. So that's Act 1 Mercedes. Very sweet, very kind, but also not afraid to bring up an issue when she sees it. While that's enjoyable enough, Act 2 Mercedes has both the conclusion to her relationship with her shitty adopted dad, and also the conclusion to the story of her half-brother and shitty stepdad, so it's time to dive into that. But before we do, we have to acknowledge the absolutely earth-shattering change they made to Mercedes between the acts. That's right, she cut her hair. And you may say that that doesn't matter, but I say it's fun to bitch about things that don't matter. Regardless, I intend to do something about this change. I am going to walk to Intelligence Systems headquarters and staple my 95 theses of why Mercedes should have kept her long hair. But walking from Maryland to Japan is a costly journey, so I'm going to need your help. And you can help me by going to FEMS Paint's Patreon and donating money to help fund the cause. Doing so will not only give me the money that I need, but it will also give you benefits, like being able to vote on polls to decide future videos on the channel. So join the likes of Atomic X160, follow Pen to the North Star on Twitch, subscribe to Great Riek, Green Brigand, Hell on Heelys, Hollow, Kieran Morin, Lightning Bolt, Me Do a Gamer, Memi, Nember, Nevrix the Fallen Shield Guy, Ranger Man Sam, Ryan Walter, Space1255, Steph D, Tato, Anti-Ginger, Brentendo11, Drew Hack, Max, and Michael Hamilton. This is not a scam. I will not take all of your money and run. Donate now, and we can bring long hair Mercedes back. In Act 2, Mercedes' Byleth support has Mercedes faced with a problem. Her dickbag adopted dad has decided that she's going to be married off to some noble from Who Caresopolis. Mercedes, obviously, doesn't want to, as she has a dream to work for people in need, perhaps for the church or an establishment of her own making. If she gets paired off into some trophy wife for her crest, she'll have to abandon her dream for the sake of her father's greedy ambitions. And faced with this dilemma, she tells Byleth, and I quote, I've always allowed myself to follow the whims of those above me. I convinced myself that everything in life was at the will of the goddess. I was blind to reality. I believed it was her will to pull me from the church and guide me to the officers' academy. The decision to enter this war was the first time I acted on my own free will. My adoptive father opposed this decision, but I somehow managed to convince him. Still, I couldn't free myself of him completely. This letter is proof of that. However, through Byleth's encouragement, Mercedes stands on her own 2 feet and vows to reject her father's letter. No longer will she be tugged by the whims of others. Mercedes doesn't want to marry that man, and so she won't marry that man. Her Ferdinand support has another fuck you to her dad. In it, Ferdinand has uncovered some shady business from him. The church she was staying in as a teenager was strong-armed by her adopted dad's money, and Ferdinand has acquired a document detailing proof of the transactions. Ferdinand gives them to Mercedes, saying that with them, she could expose him and crush his terrible ambitions for nobility before they even start. She refuses, however. While she's grateful for Ferdinand's help, rebelling against her father in this way would be through Ferdy, not through her own voice. She vows to carve her own way, again showing development from that girl who was helplessly whisked away by the whims of fate. And I think that these scenes are what makes Mercedes relatable to so many people. There is not a single person alive who hasn't been forced to abandon something they wanted to do because of circumstances well beyond their control. Seeing Mercedes take a stand against that, seeing her make her own destiny, is something that a lot of people want to relate to. She's an inspiration to us. We want to follow in her footsteps, proudly making our stand against a world that pushes us back. It's a character arc that's very easy to see and understand, making her stand out among Three Houses' already standout cast. However, there's one more loose end to her story that I want to address before I wrap things up. You might be wondering, what the hell ever happened to her brother and stepfather? Well, after she and her mother fled his abuse, he actually managed to track them down to the church they were in. He wasn't satisfied with just a meal. He wanted more Crest children to fuel his greedy ambitions. But Mercedes' mom was too old. She couldn't bear children anymore. But Mercedes, who was only like 12 to 14 at the time, was ripe enough for him to impregnate. Fucking Christ, did I really just say that? Fuck this guy. Upon hearing that his father wanted to marry his stepdaughter, who was also a child, Emile went sicko mode and killed the ever-living shit out of him. This kinda, sorta, also made him go insane and manifest his violent anger into an alter ego named the Death Knight, but that's a can of worms for another time. After that, the main story is in how they reunite. In 3/4 of the routes, they reunite in a really good, really sad way. Mercedes, despite Emile's attempts to conceal his identity behind the names Yuritsa and Death Knight, recognizes her brother. She attempts to get him to stand down, but he refuses, and he tells her to get away from him, but she also refuses. They're both too dedicated to the causes they believe in to back down, and this leads to Yuritsa meeting his end in battle. She holds him in her lap, lamenting over how she could not save him, and all the dying man can muster is her name as he passes on. Three Houses is filled with little tragedies like these. Again, like the Crest's part of her backstory, Yuritsa's death in and of itself isn't the most unique tragedy, but it being one of many tragic deaths in the story really hammers in the tragic nature of war that Three Houses stresses. But like most of the tragedies in Three Houses, it can be averted if Mercedes has had enough tea with Byleth to abandon her house. If both Yuritsa and Mercedes are in Black Eagles, the two can meet again under less dire of circumstances. Instead of trying to kill Mercedes on the battlefield, Yuritsa now tries to kill Mercedes in the comfort of the monastery. Yuritsa's insanity starts to take hold, and because of it, he tries to get Mercedes to leave him, as he fears he will kill her due to it. Mercedes, in a sheer badass girl boss moment, looks him dead in the eyes and says, "Try it." She believes that she is to blame for his insanity, as she thinks it was her abandoning Yuritsa that has caused his dive into madness. As such, she feels that, perhaps, dying by his hand is a way she can atone for the sins of the past. Yuritsa is caught off guard by Mercedes' resolve, and manages to control himself and return to his senses. However, Mercedes refuses to abandon him ever again, and makes him stay with her. And the end of this story is my favorite character ending in Three Houses, so I'm just going to end this analysis by reciting it. Once those who slither in the dark were finally defeated, Mercedes left home and opened a small orphanage in the Fargus region with her mother. After many years of kind service raising children who had lost their families, she received a letter bearing familiar handwriting. Its author, a prisoner in Enbar, expressed his sincerest well wishes to Mercedes and her family. Still more time passed until, one day, the man who wrote the letter paid her a visit. With joyful tears in her eyes, Mercedes smiled, took Emil by the hand, and at last welcomed him home. There we go. The end of yet another Fire Emblem character analysis. Thank you guys very much for coming to the third Three Houses character. As always, I would like to thank Green Brigand for helping watch over the script and make sure I don't say anything too stupid, though trust me, he's not foolproof. Before this video ends, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the Patreon, and next time you go through Three Houses, make every single unit an Armor Knight. For me. I have a bias. Until next time.
Change the world. My final message. Goodbye.